And now we are ready to mount the hinges. Use the brads that you have and put them through the holes that you've created before. When you open the tails of the brads on the back, on the inside, so to say, of the suitcase, they should be horizontal to the edge, to the long edge of the suitcase, like this. Put all three of them. I'm using the little pliers here, and just to make sure that I have my tails of the brads once again horizontal to the edge of the suitcase. Once you have it attached on one side, do the same for the other side. In order to flatten the tails on this half of the hinge, I'm opening the suitcase all the way, and I support and hold two of the halves of the suitcase with my hand from below there, and I flatten the tails, keeping in mind once again that the tails stay horizontal to the edge of the suitcase, like so. Okay, now one hinge is already in place. I will do the same with the second hinge, and then I will work on the latches on the front. I will use the brads with the longer tails this time, because the part of the latch here also has some height to it. It's not flat, so I need to get through the height of the latch, and I need to reach all the way through the chipboard as well, so the tails need to be longer than 1/4 of an inch, as in the case with the brads from AliExpress. I'm attaching one part of the latch first, and then the other part, and then I will secure the second latch too. Okay, one is done. Just checking that it's fine, that it is in place and working. Okay, now I will take care of the second one. Okay, now the second latch is also securely attached to the suitcase, and we can close them like so. Okay, now I want to add some brads here on top of the suitcase as well. If the width of the suitcase is 6 inches, so I am eyeballing now and marking a hole at 3 inches from left and right side of the strip, and poke a hole somewhere in the center of the strip itself, and then I will add 2 more brads. One will be at 1 1/4 of an inch from the left, and the second one will be at 1 1/4 of an inch from the right. So I'm just marking the places for those holes now. Now I can open the suitcase, and supporting this panel from the inside with my fingers, I can poke the holes and then put the brads in. It's all done. And I also went ahead and added more brads here on the front. They are about 3/4 of an inch away from the latch itself on each side, and I also added 4 more on the back to keep the strips securely connected to the suitcase. Now let's get back to the front of the suitcase, and I want to add a label holder here. So I will be just eyeballing where exactly I want it to be, like that. Now I want to add one more embellishment here to the front, and for that I will use a part of one of the strips that I've prepared earlier. Let me think of the length of that strip. Okay, I will cut it now. I think it's roughly 3.5 of an inch, but I will slide through that strip a D-ring, and that D-ring is 3/4 in width. Okay, so now when I have that, let's see, I don't want it to be too long. Okay, so I think I will trim it. I will trim it down now, but before doing that, let me glue both of the halves together just to keep them in place. Okay, like so. Now I will trim the whole strip, and I think I will keep it about 1 inch in length there. Okay, so something like this. Trim off the excess using my scissors, and I will ink the edges here. And this piece I want to put down to my suitcase right here on its top part, not too high, I mean not on the curve, but maybe just under the curve, in between two of the brown paper strips. Okay, so I think I will glue it down first, and then once the glue is dry, I will poke a hole in this piece, and I will add a brad to secure it nicely in place. And while it's drying, I want to prepare the same pieces and to put them here on the sides of the top part of the suitcase too. So I will once again use the leftover strip that I have, and now I know that I want those pieces to be 1 inch in length. So as they're double, I'm cutting the strip of paper at 2 inches. Like this. Now I will shape this strip with my fingers first prior to attaching a D-ring to it. Okay, now I'm sliding the D-ring through and folding the whole piece in half. And gluing it together. Don't forget to ink the edge, the top edge of this piece where you've been cutting. Okay, I will once again round the corners a little bit. Ink the whole piece. Now, okay, let's see where we put it. My D-ring, 3 inches from the left and right side, and about, I think, 5/8 of an inch away from the top. So I will mark the place, and I will do the same here. Okay. Well, I think it was 5/8 of an inch from, yeah, from the edge of the designer paper. So here I made a little mistake. Okay, right here. Okay, now your suitcase starts to get shape with additional embellishments that you've attached. Now let's take care of the handles. So you still have a few strips of paper that you've prepared before left. Okay, so you will take one of them and you will take your scoreboard and you will make a score line 1 inch away from the left edge of the strip. Okay, you will fold that and then you will make one more mark at 5.5 with that edge being folded. Okay, you will do the same with the second strip. I folded that edge and made one more mark at 5.5 of an inch. Okay, now I will take it to my trimmer and I will cut this piece off at 1 inch away from the fold line, and I'll get this, something that looks like this. Okay, now I will take one of the D-rings and I will slide it through that flap, and I will add a bit of glue and we'll hold it for a while to glue everything down. Okay, let's use a paper clip. And you will have to do the same on the other side, making sure that your D-ring is positioned like so, with its uncurved side facing the outside of the future handle. Okay, once again I will add a bit of glue there, and I will put a paper clip to hold it in place while the glue dries. I will do the same with the second handle. Okay, and when the glue gets dry, shape the handles and curve them like so. Okay, great. Now you have those two leftover pieces from the strips. We will also use them. First of all, you need to trim them so that they are 2 inches long, each one of them. Okay, so here we go, and then I will use that first one as my template for cutting the second piece. Okay, now let's score them at 1 inch, which is halfway, and you can take away the scoreboard. I will not need it anymore. Okay, now let's work on 2 of those pieces. We will fold them in half, and then we will slide them through the D-ring on the handle. Once again, I will add a bit of glue to keep it closed. I will shape the corners just a little bit. And I will ink them. Do the same for that second handle. Now we have 2 of the handles ready, and you can use them as they are already on your suitcase, but I like to wrap them with the cord. I will show you how to wrap them with wax cord, hemp cord, any other kind of cord, or even maybe baker's twine if you have one in the matching color. well, to match the style of the suitcase that you are creating. So you will not need to cut anything from the spool of the cord that you have. You will fold the cord in half, making sure that the double length of it is more than the length of the middle section of the whole handle that you have right here. Okay, and then turning the handle so that it will be convenient for you to start wrapping, you will keep two of those strings together, and you will start to wrap the cord around two of the strings and the handle together from the side which doesn't have the loop but has the tail of the cord. Okay, so just make sure that you keep that loop in the center of the handle every time when you wrap it around. Just straighten it all the time and keep everything together with your fingers. Wrap and wrap till you almost reach the end here. Okay, like so. So I've started about 1/2 inch away from this side of the handle, and I want to stop on this end as well, 1/2 inch away from the right edge, and then I will cut a piece of the cord, leaving about, well, I don't know, 3 inches, something like that. Then I will slide that tail through the loop that I have on this end, like so, and then I will just straighten it, and I will pull the tail on the other side, and when you're pulling it, that other tail that you've cut is just hiding behind the wrapped cord on the handle. Okay, so once you feel that the tail is hidden, stop pulling and cut off the excess of the cord flush with the first wrapping loop, like so. Okay, so you have a nice looking handle. One is done, so you will do the same for the second handle that you have. Then you are ready to attach the handles to the case, and you will just need to figure out where you want the handles to be. I think it will be better, as it's very thick, the paper layers that we work with right now. I think it's better to poke the hole in the brown strip first, and only then through that hole to mark the place for the bread on the suitcase itself. Okay, like so. Now I can take one more bread, and I think once again I will use the one with the longer tails. I will put it through the brown strip first, and then through the chipboard, and I will flatten the tails on the other side, and I will add one more bread to secure the handle in place. And this is the way of taking care of the second handle that you have. So I will do that offline and get back to you once done. Okay, so one handle is attached. I will attach now the second one here and get back to you. Okay, now we have it. On the bottom section of the suitcase, I had to place the handle a little bit lower than I planned to on the first place, because of this element on the latch. That kind of bubble just prevented the handle from comfortably moving around, so I had to lower the placement for this bottom handle. So this is just something that you might bear in mind, and if you're using other latches you might not have that same problem that I have, but if you're using the same pieces, just pay attention to that. Okay, now the suitcase is almost ready. You can attach the charms to the D-ring here in the front, and the charms are really something fun to choose from. These are the ones that I chose, binoculars and a little seahorse. I will connect those charms to the D-ring using some jump rings. Later on, I will keep them aside right now, and let's cover the inside of the suitcase with the designer paper. We have 2 of these designer paper pieces left. They will go on the top section of the suitcase, on the sides. You might want to check first that they really fit inside. If they don't, or the placing for them looks kind of tight, you can trim on one side of them about 1/8 of an inch maybe, and once again to round the corner, and then once again to ink those edges. Fit it again. Yeah, now seems like it's okay, so I can glue those down. Okay, I have that done. Now you have 2 additional strips of paper with the rounded corners that will go right here to the sides of the bottom section, and I can see now that these can also be trimmed just a little bit, maybe also 1/8 of an inch, or maybe 1/4. Start from 1/8 of an inch, and then check once again if they fit inside. If they don't, then trim one more time, 1/8 of an inch. Okay, when you are sure that they fit nicely, you can glue them down to the very bottom on the sides. Okay, here we go. Now we are ready to attach 2 of these panels, and before doing that, on the back side, which has a little bit of chipboard showing, I made a guideline which is 3/8 of an inch from this edge, and I'm planning to attach it to the side of the suitcase at the bottom, like so. So the line, the guideline, will be 3/8 of an inch away from the top edge of the panel that you will be attaching to the side of your suitcase, like so. Attach it all the way to the end of the back of the bottom of your suitcase, and not all the way to the front, all the way to the back. Okay, so when I do that, I like to add wet glue up to the guideline and just along the edges, and then to the inside area I like to add the hot glue, and then I will do the same with the second panel that I have. I've also marked a guideline 3/8 of an inch away from the edge, which will be at the top, and I will align it along that guideline when I'm gluing the panel down to the suitcase, both on the left and the right side. Okay, so let me quickly do that now. Okay, just like that, and quickly aligning everything along that guideline that you've created. The hot glue helps to keep it in place, and well, the wet glue will dry with time, and this piece will be glued down securely to our suitcase. We have to on the sides, and we will need to add this piece as well here on the front, but we will add it after we embellish the inside of the suitcase with the designer paper. And you remember those pieces that we prepared before, so I recommend first to kind of curve your paper prior to gluing it down. It will help you to position it inside the panel of the suitcase. Okay, so the way of gluing it down to the inside of your suitcase is basically the same like the way and the steps we followed while covering the outside of the suitcase with the designer paper. But here I think I will take off the backing from all the score tape that I have, and I will add the wet glue in those areas between the score tape. Now we need to be very precise. So I will need to align this paper piece about 1/8 of an inch away from this edge, and once I have that done, I will be able to keep on gluing the rest of the paper. Okay, so it's a little bit tricky. You might want to take your time when doing that, and when aligning it along the edge of the suitcase, just make sure that you center it not only along the long edge but also along the corners, and then you will need to curve it and press with your fingers in order to finish gluing it down. Okay, like so. Here in my case, for example, you see I don't have that much of a border from the right side, but I do have on the left. Well, I cannot change it now as everything is already glued down, but when I will work on that second section, I will keep that in mind and I will try to align it better. So once again, I'm shaping and curving the paper. Let's do the same thing here. Now we are ready to attach that last panel right here. Okay, so check first that it fits there. Okay, and then you will need to work fast as usual when you are working with the hot glue, but I'm doing pretty much the same as before. I'm adding the wet glue around the edges, and then I will add hot glue in the middle, and then I will try to quickly put it in and align it along the corners of the panels that are already glued down to the suitcase. I will press now to make sure that it's all stuck down. Okay. And now we can see that the suitcase is almost ready. Okay, we'll start to work now on the album for the suitcase. And we will work with two of the remaining chipboard pieces, which are 5 3/8 by 7.5. And we will also need a piece of canvas paper. The canvas paper that I have right here is of a brown color, but originally it was of this color, like ivory. And this layer on top is just a regular canvas fabric, and it is backed with a layer of paper. And to color this piece, I've used the Distress Spray Stain of the Vintage Photo color. And before spraying the stain on the fabric, I first sprayed it with regular water. The fact that you spray it with water lets the Distress Spray Stain spread on the canvas easier. And then I would also suggest that you wear some gloves or something like that when you color the canvas paper, because well, you don't want to stain your fingers. I did, for example, and then it took a couple of days till all the paint disappeared from my skin. So this is just a suggestion. Use gloves when you color the canvas paper. So the piece that I have here is roughly 6.5 by 7.5. We will use the canvas paper for creating the spine for our album. So if these will be the covers, in between the covers we will put a piece of canvas paper, and in a second I will give you all the measurements. Color the canvas paper first. Don't cut it to the size prior to coloring, because as you can see, some of the edges can fray, and well, it can crinkle, anything can happen. So I would suggest that you first color the piece of the canvas paper that you have and then cut it to the needed size. So I want to straighten this piece first. I want to get rid of all the unstraight edges, and for doing that I will take plain scissors. I will not cut it with my retractable knife. I will use good scissors for that, sharp scissors. They need to cut both through the layer of paper and through the layer of canvas. Straighten the edges of whatever size of the canvas paper that you have, so that finally you get one piece which is 7 inches by 8 and by 4 7/8, so 7 inches long by 4 7/8 wide. Okay, so let me first cut out that piece. This is the piece which is once again 4 7/8 by 7 inches long. So from the left side, from the left edge of this paper, I will measure 1 3/8 of an inch, and then I will turn it to this side and I will measure once again from the left edge 1 3/8 of an inch, and that will give me a spacing which will be equal to 2 1/8 of an inch in between. Okay, so this is the piece that we will work with right now. And what I want us to do is the following. We will take once again a ruler and we will measure from one short edge about 3/4 of an inch. Make a guideline. Okay, and along this guideline now we will align the covers that we are going to glue down to the canvas paper. But one more thing that I wanted to do with this piece, I will take once again those zigzag scissors and I will cut on the very edge of the paper. Look, this is how I do it. Okay, I will cut on the very edge because in the long term I don't want this edge to fray anymore, and I want it to look nice on the album, so I will just make a decorative border here, zigzag border I mean. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, like that. And you can also take your distress ink and slightly ink those zigzag edges. Okay, something like that. Okay, now before we connect to this piece the album covers, let's wrap them in the designer paper. So the sheet that I chose from the Blue Fern Studios Seaside Cottage collection is the one which is called Voyage. Okay, this is the back side of it. So I will use this side and I will cut this piece now into half, so it will be 6 6 wide by 12 inches long, like that. And now each one of those pieces I will trim to 7 inches should be enough. So for example, on the front cover I'm going to use the part of the paper which has the ship, and on the back cover I will use the side which has the flowers. I will trim from here up to the mark of 7.5, and here as well from the edge here up to the mark of 7.5. Okay, this is what I have now. And next, on this piece, which will be the front cover, I will flip it like that and draw a guideline which will be 1/2 inch away from the left edge of the paper. And okay, this will be the front. Now the back cover will have this sheet, and I will, well, once again make a guideline 1/2 inch away from the edge, which will be also on the left. It will be a little bit tricky with the paper that we have here because it's very thick, and I will need to glue it down really good on the edges here, as they're quite narrow, so I want them to stay in place. I probably will use the wet glue for that. So right now I'm aligning the chipboard piece along that guideline, flipping it to the front, and then I just want to mark up to where on this chipboard piece I need to apply glue. and I will be using wet glue as I told you. Okay, to glue it down to the designer paper. I'm not covering the whole piece. I'll be covering this side of the paper of the chipboard, as it will be anyway covered with the canvas, so I don't need to worry about that. So some things that concern working with the thick designer paper. And by the way, guys, if you have enough paper to use, you can cut, you can use not one sheet of 12 by 12 designer paper, but 2 of them, and then you will cut it to 7.5 in length, but in width you can go and cut it by 6.5, and then you will not worry about the edges being so narrow like the ones that I have here. But I just want to show to you that wrapping the cover in paper when the edges are so narrow is also possible. Okay, so what I do first is I train the paper to fold the way I want it to fold, and then I will glue first the long sides, which are my narrow sides. Okay, and oh yeah, and you need to trim the corners, of course, before doing that. Okay, so I will use my wet glue for that, and while applying glue I will make sure that I put the glue to the very edge of the chipboard as well. Like that, and then I'll make sure that I have enough of glue on the rest of the flap, and once again I will try to fold it like that, and then to burnish everything with the bone folder. Now you will see that the paper can crack, and this is what you'll get. You see here it's cracking. So there is a certain way of taking care of that, and I will show it to you as well. Well, you obviously cannot heal the crack, but you can prevent other cracks from appearing. Okay, now let's continue with the flap on this side, and after applying glue I'm holding this flap for a while with my fingers, making sure that the glue starts to work there. Okay, like that. Okay, now as far as the cracked edges are concerned, I will just apply glue to the very edge of the cover, and I will spread it with my finger, and this way I will kind of seal that edge, and the glue will dry clear first of all on the paper, which is light in colors. That glue will not even be seen. If you are working with the dark paper, the effect that you are going to get is a little bit of shine there. I mean, the paper will not be matte anymore. It will be like glazed a little bit. That's why when you are applying glue this way, try to apply it straight on the edge and don't go too far on the cover itself. Yeah, try to stay exactly on the edge, and just to make sure that I have it all caught up, I will apply glue to this edge as well. And of course you will leave it to dry for 5 minutes or so. I guess this should be enough for the tacky glue to dry. Okay, like that. So you will wrap both of the covers in this way, and then we shall continue. While the covers are drying, let's create the binding for our album pages. For that purpose, you will need 3 pieces of craft cardstock, and the measurements for these are as follows: 5 3/8 by 1 3/8, 5 3/8 by 2 1/8, and 5 3/8 by 3 7/8. Okay, now let's score these. I'll take the smaller one and I will score it at 1/2 inch, rotate and score again at 1/2 inch. The middle one will be scored at 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch on the other side, and then the spacing in between will be scored at every 3/8. The largest piece will be scored at 1 inch, 1 3/8, 1 3/4, 2 1/8, 2 1/2, 2 7/8. Okay, let's put the scoreboard aside, and now let's do this. On each one of those pieces you will need to measure 1/4 inch from the top and from the bottom. Okay, to make it exact, I will rotate the piece to the other side, and once again I will make a mark at 1/4 inch away from the edge. Then, just to make it more visible to you what exactly I did, I will connect 2 of those marks, and let me do the same with the remaining 2 pieces of paper that I have here, like so. Now I want to trim off those little rectangles on the 1/2 inch flaps. So I'm cutting along the guideline that I have, and then from here I'm cutting off the score line as well. I hope you are able to see that on video. I'm trying to position it really close to the camera. So I'm cutting like that. The score line is left on that rectangle piece. Okay, like so. So I'm doing the very same thing, cutting away the score line as well. Here I'm cutting off areas from the 1 inch wide flaps. Okay, now it's done. So let's connect these pieces together. I will reinforce the score lines on the flaps only, and don't forget about turning valleys into mountains when it comes to the score lines. Okay, so we will create something similar to the stack the deck binding. I will take the largest piece, then I will take the middle one. I will apply glue to this area, which is in between 1/2 inch flaps. Now we will position this piece on top of the one that I have, making sure that I get in between the score lines on the piece which is at the bottom. Okay, the fact that we got off the score lines right now helps us to align all the 3 pieces of the binding together so that we know exactly where to position them, one on top of the other. Okay, and this is the last piece. I will apply glue to the center, and once again I will position it in the center of the bottom flap, right in between the score lines, which are in the center. Okay, I'm aligning it first on the sides, and then when it's glued down there, I'm opening the central piece and just burnishing it down to make sure that it's glued down to the next layer of paper. Okay, so basically this is the binding. Our album will have 4 pages, but of course we want to make this binding look nice, and we will create something that looks like this. Okay, so from here to here, what we need to do is the following. I will take the leftover papers from the covers. When I wrap the covers of the album, this is what I'm left with. Okay, so I will now take any of those pieces, and I will need to cut 5 strips of paper. Each one of them will be slightly smaller than 3/8 of an inch, and I think I will use my knife, my retractable knife, for doing that. And I'm trying to keep them in the very same order as I cut, because then, you know, this is something optional, but I like when it looks like that. When you open the pages, you can kind of see the pattern there, which continues. Okay, on the spine, I mean. Okay, and one more. But if it's not important to you, you can just cut 5 strips, and that's all. Okay, now we will glue those strips down to the binding, and well, let me rotate them this way so that it's more clear to you what exactly I'm doing. So I will start, let's say, from this page here. I will apply glue to that spacing in between, and then I will glue the paper strip down like that, making sure that it gets just in between the score lines on the sides. Okay, that it's not folded, the edge of that strip is not folded when you fold the flap or the hinge on its side. Okay, once done, when the first is done, just keep on gluing the next strips until you get this. Okay, this is how it looks from the side. All of the strips are aligned, and this is how the back looks like. So now I can trim those excess pieces. Like so. Okay, and now we can continue working on the binding. Okay, so I have a leftover piece of colored canvas paper. I will just cut it in half. Okay, and then what I do is this. I will apply glue to the very edge of the binding. Just a really thin line of glue, and then I will glue the canvas with its right side down to the binding piece. I'll do the same with that other piece of canvas paper that I have on the other side. Okay. Like that. Now, of course, it would maybe be enough to use the glue only, but I want to secure that canvas paper really nice on the binding. So I will take my stapler and making sure that I don't staple too far away from the central area of the binding, I will staple it down to the binding piece. But first, one more thing that I need to do is to mark about 1/8 of an inch away from both of the edges of that canvas paper. Okay, 1/8 of an inch from here and 1/8 of an inch from here. So the staples that I put in need to be exactly at that 1/8 of an inch mark, like so, and they need to be in the border of the central part of the binding. Okay, so let me put one more in the center and one more on the right side. So here, for example, you can see that it's a little bit offset to the top and it's not going straight on the guideline that we've created, but I think it's fine. Just try to stay on that guideline, but if you go a little bit higher than that, it's okay. Just try not to go any lower than that, okay? Because then we will need to fold this piece like so. And we don't want it to be attached to the hinges that we have for the pages. Okay, so do the same thing on the other side, like that, and also fold it out. Fold the sides like so, sides of the canvas paper. Now, you can see that the staples, they don't lie completely flat. And we don't want this to happen. So what I'll do is I will take my pliers once again and I will press them down and flatten them so that the look will be like that. Okay, and do the same on the other side. Okay, now it's all flat, exactly what we need it to be. Okay, now you will use your ruler and draw something like a continuation of that score line on the flap on the canvas paper, just continue that there, that line there, and one more line on this side, and the same thing on this part of the canvas. And here as well. And now we can cut that piece off. Of course, not cutting the flap, the paper flap itself. Okay, like that. And the same thing on the other side. Okay. All right. Now we can glue the rest of the canvas paper down to the back of our binding. Before gluing it down, make sure that you flatten it really nice. Okay, so I will just apply glue here. And I will fold it out really nice. Like that. And glue it down from this side. Now, the fact that it has that paper backing is good for me now, because it's easy to glue those canvas pieces to that paper of the binding, paper base of the binding. Okay, from this side as well. Okay, now that glue, I wanted to apply it there on purpose, but it leaked out. So what I'm doing now is I'm applying glue to the very edges, to the standing out edges of the spine, and I'm spreading it there. That glue will prevent the edges of the canvas from fraying. Okay, and then your binding will look like this. I also want to add one more layer of paper to the back, and I will right now give you the measurements for that piece of paper. And we will also need to score the paper at every 1/8 of an inch, so that it's flexible enough and will allow us to open the album at 180 degrees. Okay, so to this area I want to add more paper. The paper piece that you will need is 1 3/4 by 4.5 should be enough. I will score this piece, as I told you before, at every 1/8 of an inch. And I will glue it down this way with the curve which naturally occurred after scoring, with the curve facing down. Okay, so I need to apply glue to this side of the paper with the valley score lines. Apply to the edges some glue too, and then just center it on the spine and press down. So this is the base for our pages. The pages will be attached to the hinges on this spine, and you can already go ahead and add some score tape to the hinges, to each one of the hinges, from one side and from the other side as well. I'm applying 1 1/4 of an inch score tape closer to the gasket and not to the outer edge of each hinge. Like that. Let's burnish on one side, on the other side, and here our binding is ready. Now let's get back to the covers. They are already dry, so we can work with them now. So I will take one cover, let it be the front one, and I will mark on the edge of the cover up to where I need to apply glue. If you prefer, well, actually, yeah, we can apply glue to the canvas paper itself and not to the chipboard cover. Now I need to align this along the guideline, the vertical guideline, which is 1 3/8 of an inch away from the left edge of the canvas paper, and along the guideline which I have on top, and it is 3/4 of an inch away from the top edge of the canvas paper. Okay, so I'm doing it now, and I'm burnishing to make sure that I stick it down good. Okay, so this will be the front of our album. Now I will take the second half of the cover. I measured once again the spine that I have here, and I think I need to alter the measurements for that spacing that we've left for the central piece of the album. So instead of leaving there 2 1/8 of an inch, I will leave only 2 inches, guys. So just move that guideline to the side. Okay, and now let's continue. So I will apply the glue to the designated area on the canvas paper, and I will glue the back cover down, once again using the guidelines. I want it all to be straight and nice. Okay, like so. Great, now we can fold the top section of the canvas paper, and make sure you burnish it good with the bone folder, getting into the grooves there, and burnish on the points of connection between the canvas paper and the edge of the chipboard cover. And then you will apply glue to that top flap, and you will glue it down. Same thing with the other flap on the cover. Now this is our cover starting to get shape. So the piece of the binding will be here inside, and this is how our album will look like. Oh, I'm not using that correct piece of binding. This is the one that I need to use. Okay, that one. Now, when the glue here on the back side of this paper piece dries, you can gently curve the whole binding and shape it with your fingers to create a little curve. Okay, I like that curved look of the spine, like that. So the canvas paper here, for example, it will naturally curve because, well, it's really flexible, but this piece needs to be curved by us so that the canvas paper will curve later on around it. Now I want to add some decorative elements to the spine as well, and before attaching the binding to the cover, I already need to do that. So these are the pieces that I want to use, and I want to glue them down. I want to attach them to the cover like that in 3 places. In my case, the hole for bread needs to be about 5/8 of an inch away from this edge of the cover. So I will draw a guideline first, which will be 5/8 of an inch away from the edge, like that. And then on that guideline, I will find a center, and using the ruler from Tim Holtz make it really easy. Okay, so this is the center. Let me tell you, it's at 2 3/4 of an inch from each side. And then I think I will put another mark. Well, one will be at 1 3/4 of an inch away from the central one, to the left and also to the right. Now I will take my awl and poke the holes. Now I will use 3 little brads, and I will attach those decorative elements to that cover, like so. On the album that I created with the Graphic 45 Sunkissed collection, I had the Graphic 45 brads attached in this way to the spine and to the cover of the album, but this time I want to make it a little bit different, so these are the elements that I'm going to use. Maybe I will add some corners later, I'm not sure yet. I will see how it looks like. But anyway, once you've done this, well, you know what, I will add just plain brads to the back of the cover too, because why not, really, right? Okay, so our cover is ready to meet the binding. Okay, let's see where the top and where the bottom is. Okay, so you will place the binding piece in the center of the cover, in between the folds, and you will kind of see where the folds are, because for that reason we tried to stick the canvas paper here in between really nice, though, so that it will be more visible. Okay, now I will apply glue to the long flaps of the binding piece. You can do it simultaneously and not one by one. Just make sure that you align it in the center, and then glue the flaps down. burnish. Always burnish. Don't underestimate the role of burnishing in the scrapbooking. It really helps to get a nice looking project. Okay, depending on the kind of the breads or embellishments that you use on the front cover of the album, you might be feeling that it's easier or harder to glue those flaps to the front part of the cover, as if, for example, you are using really bold and large breads, the cover will not lie flat, so it will take you some time to glue this flap down and burnish it nicely. Okay, so this is our cover with the binding, and next we will start to create the pages. And right now I will leave this cover to dry and to get shape. I can even curve that spine once again, not pressing too much, but enough to create the curve that I want. Okay, so this is our cover. Looks really nice. We'll think about embellishments for the front of the album later. Now let's continue to creating the pages. And as I told you before, there will be 4 base pages in our album. For creating them, you will need 4 pieces of cardstock. Each one of them will measure 7 inches by 10.5. So on the long side, you will score at 5 inches. You will rotate the piece and score at 1/2 inch. And do this for all the 4 pages. You will apply score tape to that 1/2 inch flap. And, well, it depends on you. I like to miter the corners of the flap. I just like it better. But then you will create the sleeve pages from these cardstock pieces. Okay, we'll have 4 of them. Here are 4 of the sleeve style pages, pocket style pages. For the photo mats to go inside the pages, you will need 4 pieces of paper. Each one of those measures 6 3/4 by 4 3/4. Okay, and we will take care of these later. So let's get to the pages now. Each one of them will have either a pocket or a belly band. So let's work on the first page now. It will have a horizontal belly band. We will have altogether 4 designs of the pages, and each one of them will be replicated twice. The pages that I have here will actually be the first one and the last one of the album. Okay, so I cut out the designer paper for gluing down to the base page, and the size of this paper piece is 6 7/8 by 4 3/4. So I will be gluing them down to the base pages, as I've mentioned. But before that, I also want to add a belly band to this page before gluing it down. So the width of the belly band is 2 inches, and I scored it at 1/2 inch on one side. I will now fold this flap and apply glue to it. Now I want it to be, well, I'm using just my craft mat and I'm eyeballing where exactly I want it to be. It's up to you. to decide where you want to position it, I'm positioning it somewhere in the central area of the page, like so. So now when I have it glued down on one side, I will score line on the other side, fold it, and trim it so that I have about 1/2 inch flap, and that is enough to glue the belly band down to the page. Okay, like that. And then I will do the same, as the design will be the same with the piece of paper for that last page of the album. Once the belly band is attached, I can glue the whole paper piece down to the base page. And now when that is done, I can choose the paper for matting the belly band, and the measurements for those paper pieces are 6 3/4 by 1 7/8. And I chose to cut the strip of paper from this sheet, which is called Embark. Okay, here we go. First 2 pages are done. I have some cards that I've cut out from this sheet, which is called calling cards. So I will choose later which one of them I want to glue where. So for now, I will keep those pages as they are, and I will continue to create the layouts for the rest of the pages. So let's flip this one to the other side, and we will take one more base page. This one we will keep aside for now, and we will work with the first page of the album, and I'll take one more base page as well. So for this set of pages, you will also first of all cut 2 pieces of the designer paper of the same size, 6 7/8 by 4 3/4, and the ones that I've cut off from the Regalia sheet by Blue Fern Studios once again. Okay, I've inked, by the way, the edges of the base paper pieces. Now I want to attach flap to those pages, so the paper pieces for the flaps, and they are once again identical, don't forget about it. So the measurements are 4 by 4 1/2, and you will score each one of them at 1/2 inch on one side. Okay, and I've applied score tape to the back of the flap, as I want now to center this piece on the page. Well, let's say like that. I will glue it down. I will do the same on this side. Before gluing it down to the base page, I want to add one more belly band here. So for the belly band, I took a strip of craft cardstock, which is 1 1/4 in width by 5 7/8 in length. I scored it at 1/2 inch on the long side. So now I can position it somewhere in the center of the page, flip it to the back side, add some glue to the flap. As usual, glue it down there first, and then score the remaining piece and glue it down as well. Okay, like this. Now this whole piece can be glued down to the page, so I will do the same steps for this side here, like that. Now I want to create a pocket on one side of the side flap. So for that I took two pieces of cardstock. Each of them is 4.5 by 2 3/4. I scored them at 1/2 inch on 3 sides and applied score tape to those flaps. Now I want to cut off the corners. Maybe it will be easier for me to do it that way. I want to trim them down at 45 degrees, so I'm using the lines on my craft mat here to do that, and the same for the other pocket. Now I can attach them to my flaps. I'll reinforce the score lines first, and they will be positioned here. So before gluing them down, I think I will mat this section of the flap, and I will give you the measurement for the designer paper right away. Okay, so let's see. You can already embellish this side with the designer paper, and the measurement is 3 3/8 by 4 1/4. 3 3/8 by 4 1/4. The same goes here. The paper piece that will be on the belly band will be 1 1/8 by 4 5/8. Let me put it down here as well. These flaps, the measurements for the designer paper will be 2.5 by 3 3/8, and this will cover the top area of the flap, and then you will glue the pocket onto the flap, and you will embellish the front of the pocket with another piece of the designer paper, which will measure 2 1/8 by 3 3/8 of an inch. Okay, and the same goes for the flap on this side. So let me do that now. Okay, so I have that done like that. Now I will glue down the paper to the top of the flap first. Once this piece of paper is in place, I will take that pocket that we've created before. I will remove the backing from the flaps, and I will attach it to the flap, aligning it along the bottom. Like so. And I will add one more piece of paper of the stated size. Here we go. We have a pocket here, and here we have belly bands on the insides of the pages, and the first page is ready and can be attached to the first hinge in our album. So for doing that, I will simply remove the backing from the hinge, and I will mount my page on top, like that. Then I can unfold it and burnish. This will ensure a good bond there of the score tape inside. Okay, and for now I can even put still unembellished photo mat into the pocket of the page. Okay, so one is ready, and we have the next page, the back side of the next page, and one more blank page to work with, which we will do now.